It's another ridiculous day in the world of Magic the Gathering. There has just been an article released where Wizards of the Coast is desperately defending its recent cash grabs and saying they have the long-term health of the game as the foremost thing in their mind. On top of that, recent comments from the Commander Advisory Group has added more fuel to the Commander ban dumpster fire.
Magic. History.
I'm an old wizard!
The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt.
Greetings, owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends. I hope the day finds you well because we have gathered for another amazing installment of Mega Magic News. We have the defense of the current state of Magic the Gathering and trying to pretend like they are not in cash grab mode. And we also have the recent CAG statements talking about the commander bans and leading people to come to crazy conclusions and adding more fire to an already insane situation. Now, before we dive into that, just want to let you know, I have officially been added in to a trading card game, and I have previewed my card over on my other channel. So if you're interested in seeing me on a TCG rectangle, I will leave the link to that down in the comment section pinned at the top. Now, let us dive in. We're going to start talking about the article first, which is over on IGN, and it's titled, Magic the Gathering Developer Responds to Fears It's Only Focused on Short-Term Profits. And this article ends off with them basically making it sound like Magic only has a decade or two left in it. So ultimately, this is a bunch of defensive maneuvering from Mark Rosewater and Ken Troop discussing what's going on with Magic the Gathering and saying, well, ultimately, we want to have the long-term health of the game in mind. It says, we really do try to look at what's going on to make Magic have its best chance of lasting for a very long time. But obviously, what we're seeing happen with the company very much contradicts that. And as a fun little added note, you might not realize this, but we are at the second anniversary of the release of the announcement of Magic 30, okay? So basically, October 4th, 2022 is when they came out and went, we're doing Magic 30, where we're reprinting the reserve list, but not really because they're gold back cards, so they don't count. Even though, if you guys didn't realize this, Mark Rosewater has specifically stated previously on his Tumblr that they made new rules for themselves in the past about the reserve list, which made it impossible to make any regular-sized Magic card printings of the reserved list cards, and this includes gold-backed cards. So according to Rosewater himself, you have a situation where Wizards of the Coast said, we will never do this, and then they turned around and did that. I wonder if that was a cash grab. Obviously, it absolutely was. What you have to remember about Rosewater is he gives himself a very particular set of rules when it comes to answering questions, where he goes, well, I just use the knowledge that I have at the current time, but not including the knowledge that I have from the last 2 years of stuff that's been developed. So he can essentially lie to us while going, I'm not lying, I just took a bunch of information that I know and said that it didn't count. So you don't have to worry about it, and I'm 100% being honest. And it's crazy to me that so many people still trust what Rosewater has to say. So the article basically goes on and says, hey, you know what? People didn't like the Universe Beyond stuff at first, but it's doing gangbusters. It's the absolute best thing. And us moving into all of these different IPs isn't some short-term gimmick. It's actually a really great thing for Magic the Gathering, even though the entirety of Magic has pretty much just turned into gimmicks, right? Secret Lair was the only place you would find Universe Beyond stuff at first, and now it's everywhere. The regular sets are essentially Universes Beyond. Duskmourn, Thunder Junction, all that stuff is cowboy world, all of it. This is so ingrained in Magic now that when they announced recently that apparently the Magic show is back on after we were told by somebody it was totally canceled, they're like, the Magic show is back on. It's got deep, rich characters, and the best thing is it reaches into every genre possible. And it's like, wait a minute, that's not what Magic is supposed to be. But they've moved so far from their actual identity, which is wild when you actually go back over all these. When I'm talking about Tumblr posts from Rosewater, there are a million posts from him saying, we want to stick with our own IP. We don't want to dilute our own IP. We don't want to work on other people's worlds. We want to work on our worlds. And it's reached the point where all they do is work on other people's worlds. And our worlds are all just tied into other people's worlds. Look at Duskmourn. You've got Chucky, you've got Ghostbusters. So they very much wanted to incorporate things, especially from the Ghostbusters side of thing, into their world. So Magic has lost a lot of its identity. And some of the stuff that's being said in this article, for example, Ken Troop talks about Aftermath. And he's like, you know what? After Aftermath didn't get that much of a good reception, we decided that the Aftermath set that we had for Thunder Junction, it's like, there's no way that we're going to release this just trying to chase money. And they try and make it sound like they're being good dudes and going, you know what? We buried the Aftermath for Thunder Junction because we just don't want you guys to have a bad experience, even in the slightest, when everybody knows that Aftermath is one of the worst selling products in Magic's history. It was an absolute failure where they're like, hey, why don't you pay full price for 5-card packs? And you can open a booster pack where you get 3 of the same card in your 5-card pack. Opening Aftermath is one of the most frustrating experiences. It's even worse than Fallen Empires. Fallen Empires I liked, but it did have a situation where they had 4 different versions of each common and stuff. So opening the packs could really kind of get to you. Aftermath, way worse than that. And they knew it was such a failure that they even had to make last minute changes to the Assassin's Creed product. But they went, hey guys, we're sorry, but the Assassin's Creed product is really far down the production line, and we got all your feedback about Aftermath, but we can really only make some very minor changes. And so they're presenting the change of taking Aftermath away from Thunder Junction like it was doing us a big favor. But the entire thing was a skeezy lie from the beginning. They told us the Aftermath sets would be all about continuing on the story that we saw in the main set and giving us more of that. But you couldn't draft it because it's only 5-card packs, but that's okay because it's focused on world building and the story. And then we got the cards that were supposed to be the Thunder Junction Aftermath cards, right? But they were shoved into Thunder Junction, and they were all made as mythic rares, first of all, as a massive cash grab, where they're just like, all right, look, these were going to be uncommon in the Thunder Junction set, but now we're printing them all as mythics. Deal with it. Also, when it comes to the whole extending out the story, this isn't a cash grab. This is totally about extending the story. The written story was like, only loot is in the vault. With the actual cards that were in the vault, we had leftover artwork from Ixalan. We had random dudes from Ixalan coming out of the vault. Check it out. I'm an Oltec. And it's just like, wait a minute. This is just artwork that you literally had like lying around from Lost Caverns of Ixalan. Why is this in here? And it's because the Aftermath sets were just a way to use slush artwork they already had purchased, already had kicking around, and needed to find a home for. So they just shoved all of that into the Thunder Junction Aftermath big score set, and then just went, oh, this was totally going to be a continuation of the story. It's blatantly a cash grab, where they wanted us to pay the same price for way less. And this very much diminished Assassin's Creed as well, where it was stuck with this concept. It blows my mind that Wizards of the Coast thought they were going to get away with it. But ultimately, they're trying to frame it as we just care about our customers, and it's definitely not about trying to get money. The only reason they canned that product is because it was going to be a financial disaster. It was going to flop even harder than Aftermath because we had already seen what Aftermath was, and Wizards would have had to deal with massive blowback. But it's just like, guys, we put you before our profits, and the article literally says, we gave up a big chunk of money. Yeah, Right, there is zero chance that they gave up a big chunk of money because wait, this is a follow-up to one of the worst products we've ever made, and we're giving up a bunch of money by not making it. If it made a bunch of money, Wizards of the Coast would keep doing it, right? And this article is so blatantly nonsense that even if you go to the biggest fanboy locations, like if you go to the main Magic Reddit where everybody is hardcore fanboying about Magic, guess what? Everybody is like, yeah, right, bro. Yeah, right. You're lying. And even, you know what, even if the developers in the article who are just like maybe Mark Rosewater and Troop do have the best interests of the game in mind, but ultimately, guess what? Hasbro makes all the decisions at the top and gives them their marching orders. So there's no control over that. If you actually go and read the Magic Reddit thread, it's pretty hilarious. There are thousands and thousands of comments, some with thousands of upvotes, just clowning on Wizards, right? Just talking, basically just calling them straight out thieves. The top comment is straight up calling Wizards of the Coast thieves over this. And this is in one of their biggest #1 fanboy sites, because Magic Reddit literally gets previews from Wizards. They get rid of all kinds of different things that are anti-Wizards in a lot of ways. So certain things they can't just wave away and they have to allow the conversation to occur around it. And you can see just how upset everybody is. Everybody knows the nonsense they're doing now is cash grabs and short-sighted. It's not about the long-term health of the game. Some people are trying to chime in and saying, well, Wizards has kept the game going for many, many years, so obviously they know what they're doing. Yeah, except they changed the recipe in the last few years big time. Companies that care about their product and the long-term health of it, they care about card quality. They care about card balance. Look at Modern Horizons 3, for example. First of all, they forced rotation into Modern, where they're like, no. We know that you had Modern to escape from the rotation cycle of Standard, but we are forcing this into it. You have to go after those cards. Also, this isn't a cash grab at all, but we're slapping commander decks alongside it, and ultra premium commander decks too that are super expensive. And also, we're going to tell game stores that if they don't run enough of the Thunder Junction events to sell Thunder Junction products, then we won't let them get, well, we can't guarantee you'll get the highest tier commander products. So there's all this behind the scenes manipulation that's not based on genuine faith in their product. They knew that Markov Manor damaged their brand horrifically, right? Like, or Karlov Manor, just so you guys know, I call it Markov Manor because that's hilarious to me. And actually there was a communication that Wizards sent out where they accidentally called it Markov Manor as well. But just so you know, I know it's Karlov Manor, I know that triggers some of you guys, but guess what? Markov Manor, or Markdown Manor, is the name that it is mainly known as. So, Wizards of the Coast has done a ton of damage to their brand this year, and they are in full-on damage control mode with this absolute nonsense, and nobody is buying it. Like, I literally saw comments from people saying, yo, I got into Magic just like around War of the Spark, or I got into Magic around 2020, and Magic has wildly changed since then. We're not about cash grabs, but everything is warped around Commander. So we're going to slap Commander decks onto every single standard release. We're going to go ahead and accidentally break Modern by creating cards that are targeted for Commander that we didn't even test after we made. Like, we didn't test it for Commander, we didn't test it for Modern, we didn't test it at all. But I know we're power creeping cards. I know we're not testing anything, but we're definitely not doing short-term cash grabs, and we have the long-term health of the game in mind. Obviously, Hasbro needs the money, right? They had a whole bunch of banger years because of Wizards of the Coast. They got 5 years of doubling profits, and then they turned around and went, do it again, 3 more years of doubling. And it's just like, how is this possible? And the answer is, it's not. We have the highest prices we've ever had. We have the lowest card quality we've ever had. We have the most poorly designed sets that we've ever had. And they're turning around releasing these damage control articles going, no, like, hey man, you know, we've got the player's best interests in mind. And it's not just trying to get the quickest buck possible. We want Magic to be around forever. That's why we shoved a bunch of Capenna detectives onto Ravnica, because it totally fits the flavor of the world of Ravnica, and it definitely wasn't just a bunch of artwork we had kicking around, and we didn't ruin the plane by cramming that in there because we're thinking long term. And again, the article literally ends off with making it sound like Magic only has 10 to 20 years left in it. That's actually the article writer, the one who's there to help Wizards of the Coast get a good spin on this, because that's what this is. This is some spin doctoring. Now that we have discussed that, let's talk about the Commander ban dumpster fire and how it is raging ever higher. So, obviously, everybody and their mother knows that Wizards of the Coast has taken over the rules committee. That is an inevitability. Everybody's heard about it because it is the biggest news that has set fire to Magic. Obviously, there's nothing else that's bigger news in this current time frame. So you have the situation where one of the CAG members, the Commander Advisory Group. So you had the actual rules committee, the guys making their choices, and then you had the advisory group, which was made up of up to a couple thousand more people. I'm not sure the exact size of it. We don't know everybody who is in it, but a very high prominent member of it was from the command zone. His name's Josh, right? A lot of you, I'm sure, are very aware of who he is. So he basically resigned from the CAG after this entire fallout, after the banning, but before Wizards of the Coast had actually taken over the format. And he basically offered some enlightenment as to what was going on in the form of Wizards of the Coast apparently said to the rules committee, do not ban Jeweled Lotus, do not ban Mana Crypt. Now, there's a couple of different ways to view this. If you want to be kind and take the best possible outcome, you can go, all right, Wizards of the Coast told them that because they knew there would be huge blowback and that this would cause them to get flooded with people hating on them, right? And on the negative side of things, you can say Wizards of the Coast said that because those two are massive, juicy reprints that they have been milking for years and years and years. Now, if you want my opinion, I very much believe the second category, right? Wizards of the Coast isn't actually that interested in protecting the rules committee as far as I'm concerned. I firmly believe for the longest time Wizards was waiting for the right moment to take control of the Commander format away from the rules committee. Because if you think about it, and I've literally had people ask me this question, they're like, okay, Hasbro shareholders want to know, and this is from people talking to Hasbro shareholders, they want to know why Commander is Magic's biggest format, right? Sure is. So why is an organization outside of Magic the Gathering in charge of their biggest format? And obviously, that is an excellent question. That's going to be pretty difficult to answer to shareholders in a satisfactory manner, right? So Commander grew up basically from grassroots action over decades as a player-controlled format, and Wizards ignored it completely up until 2011, where they started to make one set of Commander decks a year. Flash forward to the recent era where Wizards' Commander is the main thing. Commander is the only thing. And they've had to backpedal from this, right? So we've got Foundations coming along, which is meant to address the lack of products for new players. They realize that they need to not just be offering Commander decks along with regular standard sets so people can get into the game. They're going to dial back the number of legendaries they're putting in each set, but these changes take time to come into effect because Wizards has their sets already designed out a year and a half in advance. So they fully focused on Commander, and the shareholders are like, yo, so why are you guys not in control of this? And they're like, well, it grew up with these guys in charge, and we want to leave them in charge because they're doing a good job. But really, the underlying reason is if Wizards of the Coast tried to take control of Commander, it would create a massive schism, right? And people would freak out and be like, no, forget it. We're going to go with the rules committee. All kinds of different splinter groups would basically form, and it would cause damage overall to the Commander format and a lot of bad PR for Magic. Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro does not want Hasbro shareholders to know that the biggest format, the most profitable format of the most profitable part of Hasbro, because Wizards of the Coast is the most profitable part of Hasbro, right? So you've got this situation where they don't want the shareholders to know we're not in charge of it, but they can't just take control of it because, hey, guess what's going to happen? Well, everyone's going to freak out. So that's not going to look good. Word might get back to the shareholders, who they're trying not to spook. They want them to stay because revenue is down and Hasbro is not doing well overall. So they don't want to spook the fish, as it were. Now the situation happens where the golden goose lays the sweet egg for Wizards of, wait a minute, the rules committee is getting super hassled about this. Well, we can just step up and be like, we shall be your knights in shining armor, the grand protectors. We're only doing this because we have to. Meanwhile, ever since they decided Commander was the main format, behind the scenes, they absolutely had to be having discussions of, okay, when do we step in? When do we take over? When do we reach the point where the damage to our shareholders' perception is worse than the damage to our actual Commander play group? We can always rebuild that with new players since we're drawing people into that format as the main thing anyway. So this, I mean, I did a video talking about it, how the rules committee was going to get taken over by Wizards. It was an inevitability. So all of this new information here, basically, where we've got Josh coming out and saying, Wizards of the Coast said, don't ban these cards, has caused people to speculate very, very much that, okay, wait, if Wizards said not to ban Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, then they're absolutely going to unban those cards. So now you've got this crazy market frenzy where some people are raging because they sold off those cards, or people burned the cards in protest, cut them in half. People did all kinds of things with their cardboard rectangles as a result of the ban announcement. I mean, they didn't know. They didn't know less than a week later Wizards was going to go, you know what, we're in charge. And Wizards of the Coast has said, we don't have any plans to unban Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt, but their word doesn't mean anything, right? And they can easily come along and go, we've realized after the uproar, it's in the best interest of the community. This is a phrase I expect to see them use all the time. It's in the best interest of the community to unban these cards. I expect that Wizards of the Coast is going to do a huge Commander unbanning where they go through the list, look at cards like Iona, Shield of Ameri and stuff like that and go, wait a minute, we can totally reprint these in reprint sets, get a whole bunch of new reprint equity to get, like, to make up for the whole Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt stuff, right? And then, hey, we're banging again. We got all the stuff to sell, no worries. We don't have to worry about the Crypt or the Lotus for now. And then what they'll do is a year or two down the line, after they've power crept Commander even more, then they'll turn around and go, you know what, guys? We've taken a look at things and we've realized that the overall situation has changed. And in the best interest of the community, we're going to go ahead and unban Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt. I firmly believe that going forwards, Wizards of the Coast will never do another Commander ban. They have their tier system, which is nebulous enough that it can echo the Rule Zero. Hey, you guys got to talk about it at your table. We can only give guidance, right? And they can just go, oh, the most powerful cards will just be tier 4 cards, right? So we'll just put them up to tier 4. If a card becomes a problem, we'll put them up to tier 4. They've even come out and said, we're not married to the concept of 4 tiers. We can do a 5th tier, and that can be the CEDH tier, where you have the most competitive stuff. But at the end of the day, that equals a Commander format where the most powerful stuff isn't banned, because Wizards knows what Commander is like. On the surface, they like to present it as it's a community thing and everybody talks happily at the beginning of the game, and people are like, my deck is a power level 4. And by that I mean, I have 4 different 2-card combos that let me win on turn 3. And other people are like, your deck is a 9, Billy? I'm sick of your crap, right? So Rule Zero is not something that actually works really well. It's based off the real concept of a group of friends who have been playing cards together for years and years and years and have yelled at each other enough that they don't play the things. You can't play mass land destruction all the time. So Wizards of the Coast is absolutely capitalizing on this, and the furor around Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt is absolutely insane. I've never seen price movement like this in my life, where a card gets banned, tanks down, down to nothing, and then rebounds up super hardcore. So the question isn't really whether Jeweled Lotus and Mana Crypt will get unbanned. The question is, when will they get unbanned? And I'm expecting it to happen further down the road. Now, there is the tiniest chance that Wizards may not unban them, but considering they straight up said to the rules committee not to ban those 2 cards, I mean, forget Dockside, and obviously Nadu, there's no conversation about, because it's unbalanced garbage that they didn't even test. It blows my mind that they managed to just hose multiple formats with one random commander card that they didn't even test. But we're not living in the era of cash grabs or anything, right? So buckle up, friends. We're going to move into even crazier cash grab territory now that Wizards of the Coast is in full control of Commander. So thanks for coming by and hearing what I have to say. Big shout out to my patrons. You guys rule. I'll be live streaming tonight over on my other channel, my live stream channel. So I'll leave a link to that down in the pinned comment at the top of the chat. And on top of that, if you want to see me in a TCG, and you do, the artwork is absolutely amazing. And if you like the intro of my video, you will notice there are multiple fun Easter eggs in the artwork too. So I'll leave a link for that as well in the pinned comment. But that being said, it's time for me to go. So see you guys next time.